So the Utah Jazz just gave Rudy Gobert $205 million. And as you can tell by the title, I think this is a huge mistake. I mean, where do I even start with this? We can start by talking about Gobert himself, I guess. And it's not like he's a bad player. He's one of the best rim protectors in the league and a very good shot blocker. He definitely is one of the few players in the league that people avoid driving directly at, and that's a very valuable player to have. He's also just really big and really strong and is a pretty good rebounder. Unfortunately for Gobert and the Jazz, that's about where the positives end. He's not a good perimeter defender at all, and he's not really quick laterally enough to be a threat outside of the paint defensively. He also doesn't give you anything on offense unless he's in the restricted area or catching a lob. You're not exactly going to give him a ton of post-up touches either. I mean, that just isn't someone you give $205 million. There are very few players in the NBA worth $205 million. There has been the small market argument where people are saying you pay this money to Gobert or lose him if you're the Jazz. There aren't exactly free agents lining up to sign in Utah. But I am of the honest opinion that you let Gobert walk before you give him that kind of money. He declined a max offer before, and at that point, you should have let him go. It may have been an Andre Drummond type situation where you trade him for way below his actual value, but because you don't want to pay him the money, it's what you've got to do. Getting something for him is better than nothing, and chances are a trade package for Gobert, which the Jazz are in dire need of. But let's talk about another reason why this is a mistake for the Jazz. This signing, along with Donovan Mitchell's extension, put the Jazz in absolute cap hell. The Mitchell signing isn't bad at all, though. I don't want that to come across like that. And actually, the guaranteed $163 million will probably look cheap in a few years, provided the cap keeps going up. But Gobert will be making $35, $38, $41, $43, and $46 million throughout this contract, which is absolutely insane for the player that he is. Gobert, Mitchell, Clarkson, Bojan, and Ingles take up $107 million next season, which is the 2021-2022 season. Even if the cap goes up, that still doesn't leave them a lot of room. It leaves them a few $1,000,000. The season after that, those guys minus Ingles will take up $101 million. And the season after that, they have 4 players with $97 million on the books. So yeah, their 2 guys are making a boatload of money. That's not even including possible incentives, which could make Mitchell's contract up to $195 million, which would cripple their cap flexibility even more. I honestly believe that using that money for a guy like Serge Ibaka and some actual depth would have them only marginally worse, with their cap flexibility remaining intact. That's a better position to be in as a lottery team than paying Gobert $205 million. Oh, yeah, and if you haven't seen my Western Conference standings prediction, I had the Jazz missing the playoffs. There are teams out west like the Lakers, Clippers, Blazers, Nuggets, Warriors, Suns, and Mavs that I think are better than them. But with Houston looking like they'll trade James Harden pretty soon, that leaves the 8th seed in limbo. But there's still the Grizzlies and Pelicans to contend with for that 8th seed. And if the Rockets end up getting Ben Simmons in return for Harden, that will leave them to contend with too. So the Jazz are a lottery team with no cap flexibility and a big man in the wrong era making $205 million. I am so sorry, Jazz fans. I hope the front office figures something out and makes them a better team. Or else, I think we'll be talking about Donovan Mitchell trade requests in a couple years. But that's about it for this one. I just think overall this is a huge mistake by the Jazz front office. They'll feel the consequences of this decision later down the line trying to build a good team in the West. And at this point, they're not. The roster is paper thin, and you're paying someone who is a top 20 player at best $205 million. Did you also know that's the most money paid to any big man ever in the history of the NBA? I mean, their starting lineup is looking like Mike Conley, Donovan Mitchell, Royce O'Neal, maybe, Joe Ingles, and then Bogdanovich and Rudy Gobert. Off the bench, you have Joe Ingles and maybe Royce O'Neal, whichever one doesn't start, and then you have Jordan Clarkson. I mean, that's not good. And then you have a couple other guys that are really don't have their footing yet just in the NBA. So we'll just have to see what the Jazz does with this, because it's a mess. It's a mess. I think it was a huge mistake. But anyway, if you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. I'd greatly appreciate it. If you didn't like it, leave a dislike. And y'all have a good one.